Welcome to the local campaign on Rogers TV. This is the debate for Aurora-Oak Ridges and Richmond Hill, and I am your moderator, Caroline Greck. Over the next hour, we will hear from candidates on a range of issues after questions from me and questions from the public that are on tape. Keep in mind, candidates, you have 1 minute to answer the questions, and then we will open the floor for discussion. I will, however, interrupt if candidates speak over one another and the viewers at home can't hear. Rogers TV invited all the candidates registered in the riding, and the candidates you see here today accepted that invitation. Starting from your left, we have Leona Alleslev from the Liberal Party of Canada. Next, we have Kyle Bowles from the Animal Alliance Voters Party. Next, Brenda Power from the NDP Party. And finally, Costas Menegakis from the Conservative Party of Canada. We did a draw for seating and speaking order before we began, and we will start with opening statements. Go ahead, Leona.
Hello, I'm Leona Alleslev, and I'm the federal Liberal candidate for Aurora-Oak Ridges-Richmond Hill. I attended Royal Military College in Kingston. I served as an Air Force officer for 10 years. I worked in the federal government. I was a management consultant at IBM, and most recently, I was an aircraft manufacturing manager at Bombardier Aerospace. I've lived in the community for over 11 years, and I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old. And over the last decade, I've watched this country become something I barely recognize. Socially, politically, economically, and internationally, this is not who we are as Canadians. It's time we took our country back. And you and I, we have a community to build. We have a country to build. And I would be honored to serve as your Member of Parliament for the first for this riding. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kyle.
My name is Kyle Bowles, and I'm running for the candidate position for your local riding for the Animal Alliance Environment Voters Party of Canada. I've grown up in the area which I'm running for today, and what I have seen over the time that I have grown up, I have seen, especially over the past 5 to 10 years, I have seen our community paved over, our ecology destroyed, and the vision and the way that our community is being developed is incorrect and will destroy our community's ecology and will continue to just make life inaffordable for families and for our community, and it's not the kind of vision that we need for our community. What we need to be doing is we need to make life more affordable. We need to make our community a lot more naturally integrated with the ecology, and we need to make life more affordable for families. If you guys will let me be your voice in the Parliament, I will be honored to serve as your federal MP.
Next.
Hello, my name is Brenda Power, and I'm very proud to be representing the New Democratic Party in the riding of Aurora-Oak Ridges-Richmond Hill. I, too, have been shocked and dismayed over what's happened to our country in the past 10 years. Our democracy has been eroded. Our rights are being threatened. Numerous agencies that had been charged to protect our environment have been shut down. Numerous status of women's offices, Veterans Affairs offices, and the list goes on and on. We want to break down the walls of Fortress PMO. We want to open up the government to be open and accountable to the people and to engage the people, because the government is the people. I firmly believe in democracy, and I would be honored to represent you in Ottawa.
Next, Costas.
First of all, I would like to thank Rogers for hosting us today, and thank you to all the viewers who are watching us. My name is Costas Menegakis. I am a businessman and entrepreneur. I have devoted the better part of my adult life to volunteering in my community. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of being the Member of Parliament representing the good people of Richmond Hill. Our conservative plan, our low-tax plan for job creation and long-term prosperity is indeed working. Over 1.3 million net new jobs since the depths of the economic recession of 2009 have been created. Canadians today enjoy the lowest federal tax rates in over 50 years. The last time they were this low, John Diefenbaker was Prime Minister of our country. if I am fortunate enough to be re-elected to Canada's Parliament to represent the good people of Aurora and Richmond Hill, I will continue to be a strong voice in Canada's Parliament for my constituents. I look forward to today's debate and to fielding your questions.
Thank you, candidates. We are going to move to our first taped question now. Please look at your monitor.
Hi, my name is Paul Peary, and I'm a councillor for the town of Aurora and a board representative on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. My question to all the candidates is, what is the biggest problem, in your opinion, facing local municipalities, and what would your party do to address the issue?
Kyle, we'll start with you.
Well, I think for our community, the biggest problem that we haven't been tackling is urban sprawl. It has left our communities ecologically damaged, and the reality is that municipalities don't really have an honest approach for how we strategize building and planning for our communities into the future. We need to be creating residential and commercial developments which are more ecologically sustainable. We need to create naturalized developments which will actually help to preserve the ecology of our area, which provides so many ecosystem services which, if they're not preserved, we will end up burdening that cost onto the residents and make life, which has already had the cost of living increased on them, even more unaffordable. We need to make life more affordable for people. We need to invest in the social integrity, not destroy the future.
Next, Brenda.
I also believe that one of the biggest challenges facing municipalities today is the issue of growth and expansion and how municipalities can deal with that. The NDP party intends to invest in infrastructure and especially in public transportation to relieve the pressures on municipalities and to give funding directly to municipalities. It also intends to invest in affordable housing and to work with the local municipalities to develop the local housing and the projects in a sustainable and environmentally friendly way, to provide jobs in the communities through tax incentives for small businesses, and to invest in green technologies, to also invest in jobs in the communities.
Costas?
Our region has grown exponentially. Over 1.2 million Canadians call York Region, call York Region their home. Our government has introduced the largest infrastructure investment in the history of Canada, over $80 billion, spanning a 10-year time period. We're focusing on investing in local transit initiatives to improve the transit in our region, which seems to be, is the largest and biggest problem affecting the region today. I'm a big advocate of bringing the subway up Yonge Street through Richmond Hill and hopefully further north than that. In fact, in my pre-budget consultations and my report to the Finance Minister for the last 4 years in a row, along with my elected colleagues in the neighboring ridings, have made that one of our top priorities. I look forward to working closely together with all levels of government, particularly municipal leadership, because I believe governing is a collaborative effort. We are all here to serve you, our constituents, the residents of Aurora and Richmond Hill.
Leona.
I think that's an excellent question and one that we need to all consider. We've had the biggest problem facing municipalities is that we've had a federal government that has abrogated its responsibility to work collaboratively with the provinces and the municipalities. We have a federal government that has been absent. That will change under a Liberal government. We are committed to investing the largest investment in history, and that's $60 billion on infrastructure, $20 billion for transit and for roads alone, $20 billion in social infrastructure, housing and community centers, and $20 billion on social green infrastructure, wastewater treatment. We need a federal government that works with the provinces and the municipalities to define and move on significant infrastructure priorities.
Thank you. Now we will open up the floor for discussion. And again, I won't call on you. Please discuss this issue further.
I think we really need to all candidates, we really need to step back and look at how we are planning. Simply going forward with growth without proper development is inadequate for our community. There were 2 articles in the Liberal and Aurora-Banner newspaper which indicated that councillors, when they had proposals of growth plans, said that their communities, if we did not develop properly, could not grow anymore. Simply developing an infrastructure, when we do not have proper, adequate development plans, which that actually take into account preserving the ecology, will just further damage our communities. When I go door to door to my constituents, the first thing that they're always concerned about are 2 things: the cost of living and how do we save our ecology and our green space. It doesn't seem like, honestly, from any of the platforms, to respect all of you, that any party really has an adequate plan to how we actually integrate the existing residential units and commercial development with preserving our ecology. Simply throwing more money at the problem is not going to solve the problem.
I think the Conservative government over the last 10 years have said that they've invested, and yet A, there's no new money that's coming, and B, it hasn't been in our region. We haven't seen any major investment in any kind of infrastructure that the federal government has partnered with in York Region over the last 10 years. And so while the Conservative candidate will give us an impression that he will work with the provinces and the municipalities, that has not been what's happened over the last 10 years, because Stephen Harper has not met with them. So why should we believe that at this point going forward that suddenly they will see a priority to work with the provinces and the municipalities on these major infrastructure programs?
Clearly, we need to set the record straight. The federal government has invested heavily in infrastructure in York Region. $50 million to expand the FLOW program, which brought the Viva buses to York Region, $135 million investment in the maintenance and operation facilities that will house up to 138 Viva buses for York Region, which is servicing the entire community. The federal government, contrary to the views of the comments of my Liberal opponent, has worked very closely with both the province and the municipalities. In fact, it might be of some interest to note that the gas tax refund funding that comes back to the municipality of Richmond Hill this year will be $5.4 million, $1.5 million for Aurora, every single year. That's an actual check, cash, that comes back for local infrastructure investments that are municipalities use to improve
Let's talk
the
about
entire,
the Viva buses that are going to come up
infrastructure
Yonge Street
investments in
and
local
make it
infrastructure
even
investments,
more difficult
parks,
for any tribe.
roads,
You
and
say
other
we want a
infrastructure
subway.
investments
You've
in the
spent
riding.
10 years and we haven't had any movement on a subway north of Finch.
Well,
the Viva buses will simply make it more difficult
Leona,
for any traffic to move.
What you need to understand is that governments need to work collaboratively. A study needs to be done, needs to be approved by the municipality.
We can spend time wasting on studies, but the problem is that we don't have an adequate plan to actually
by the province. And once the province and the
plan.
municipality have identified that as a goal, the federal government will be at the table. In fact, the federal government has made that very, very clear to both the province and the municipalities.
The federal government hasn't met with the premiers in over 6 years.
You're mistaken. The federal government meets with premiers consistently. In fact, the Prime Minister has met one-on-one with every premier across the country. We continue to work very closely, collaboratively, interdepartmentally with all of the premiers and their cabinets and their departments.
In our riding, we have seen urban sprawl continuously develop, and no party has an adequate plan to really talk about urban sprawl, because if we continue with development as usual, what's going to happen is the costs on homeowners and residents are going to increase. Simply having a strategy, respectively, is not going to work. We need to have a vision for how our community is going to grow. We need to have a plan in terms of how we preserve our biodiversity, which maintains the ecological services of our riding, specifically because it's in the Oak Ridges Moraine. Now, with all due respect to all of the party nominees sitting here today, we continued all of the plans that your parties put forth, advocate further sprawl, further commercial development that is not sustainable, that keeps costs on homeowners increasing, because the projections for that type of development will keep increasing threefold.
Okay, candidates, I think we're going to move on now. We've discussed that at length. The next question will be from me. Talk about the unique issues facing your particular riding and what plans you have to address them. In particular, Please include how your voice specifically will be heard in Parliament, and we will start with Brenda on this round of questions.
I believe the unique issues facing this riding, again, go back to the issues of growth and sprawl, public transportation, and the environment, because as Kyle pointed out, we are so close, a good chunk of Richmond Hill is in the Oak Ridges moraine. And I also agree very strongly that any development has to be in concert with preserving the environment and protecting the ecological systems surrounding this area. Sprawl is a negative, and we're not promoting sprawl. What I would like to do is work directly with the municipalities, along with the people in the municipalities, to come up with plans for development that are sustainable and healthy for the environment.
Costas?
As I said earlier, our region has grown exponentially. We're 1.2 million people today. To put that in context, the province of Saskatchewan is about 1,040,000 people. The region has definitely, that growth has brought in some challenges. One of the challenges, of course, is infrastructure investment with respect to transit. It's something that our government has focused on considerably. I plan to continue to be a strong voice for Aurora and Richmond Hill with respect to infrastructure investment and other projects that the municipality deems as important for both of these great towns. Annually, I hold pre-budget consultation meetings. I hold them openly for the public to come, and I hold one for businesses to come, so we can continue to support the small businesses that are the spine, if you will, of the economic strength of our region. I will continue to work closely with them to create jobs in York Region. At the same time, work closely with the municipality moving forward.
Thank you. Leona.
I think the major issues affecting us we've already spoken about are obviously transit and transportation, but that's also affecting the jobs in our area. We've lost manufacturing jobs primarily in the automotive sector, with Magna moving their operations to other regions, and that's had a drastic impact on our jobs in our area. And we need to invest in infrastructure like the Liberal plan is committed to doing, so that we can not only create jobs immediately, but we can encourage companies to come and grow here as well through innovation in science and technology, which the Liberal government is committed to investing in, as well as looking after our seniors and our youth. I will have an opportunity to work and make my voice heard because I'm on a team that believes in a team. The Liberal government and Justin Trudeau is committed to all members of Parliament having a voice, not being muzzled. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle.
Well, if I have the honor of being elected as your federal MP, the first thing that I want to introduce into the legislative body is a wildlife corridor strategy which helps to connect our species and allows them to be mobile. One of the most inappropriate things, I think, particularly for this riding, is residents want to know, how do we preserve the Oak Ridges moraine, and how do we actually preserve the ecology and keep, how do we make life more affordable than the continued projected rates of growth in terms of cost of living that we're seeing today. We need to develop a wildlife corridor strategy, which will basically, instead of taking out money from the federal budget, we just basically require that all new developments have to be naturalized, and that all of the naturalized will be connected. And so we also need to promote small businesses in the area rather than promoting large businesses.
Now we will open the floor.
I was curious to hear some of the previous comments. In fact, our government is a very open government. I'm very proud to be part of Stephen Harper's team. For the last 4 years, I have witnessed transparency. A voice of every member of Parliament counts. In fact, a historic first, the most private members' bills that have been passed by any Parliament in Canada's history were passed in this last Parliament. Over 40 members of Parliament were able to pass their private members' legislation through Parliament. It's law today in our land. The Conservative government has the record of the most free votes amongst members of Parliament. The NDP has had none. The Liberals have had a few. but the Conservative government has the most free votes. That can easily be looked up. It's an open government, a government that's responsive, a government that is focused, always, as the Prime Minister says, on doing what is right for Canadians. We will always govern.
We've lost
for what is in the best
400,000
interest
jobs.
of Canadians.
We've lost
we will
the
not
ability
govern.
to have an open, and this is a government shrouded in secrecy. You have a PMO that is unelected, and as we've seen from the Duffy trial, we have no checks and balances on these unelected officials who are actually directing the country. So I find it hard to believe that you've had that many free votes when MPs are told exactly what they can say.
The free votes are a matter of public record. They can easily be looked up. You mentioned the Duffy trial. That just opens the floor for us to ask where the $40 million in the sponsorship scandal that the Liberals had have never been paid back. There's a litany of scandals that plagued the Liberal government and the Liberal Party over the last few years. I prefer for this discussion not to go there. I prefer for the discussion to speak about the future of this country,
so
for what we are going to be doing about our constituents,
let's
for
talk
what we are doing about our
how
constituents.
Under a conservative
the question
government,
was, what
we've
is
had
unique to our
manufacturing jobs and the automotive industry pummeled.
Let's talk about that. 1.3 million net new jobs since the depths of the economic recession have been created in this country. We have record investments in manufacturing. In fact, Stats Canada released the results yesterday. Growth in the manufacturing sector. We've expanded trade for Canada with 39 new free trade agreements around the world.
We've destroyed local jobs, with all due respect, Mr. Menegakis. We have continued to sell our sovereignty abroad with all of the secret trade deals that your government is putting forward, and we're not talking about the people.
None of the deals are secret. All of the deals are a matter of public
secrecy.
record. You can look them up, and you can get the details of them.
Just because you can look them up doesn't mean that Canadians have the voice. We need to create jobs here locally in the riding. We're focusing on all these other issues, but we're not talking about the stuff that matters about people in this riding, making costs more affordable for families and for residents, making a community and building a community that will continuously grow, and that will grow in a way that will be sustainable in the future, so that way we don't pave and destroy the ecological gem that is the Oak Ridges Moraine. None of the parties have a real plan or understand what sustainable development means.
Brenda, do you want to weigh in here?
The idea of this government being open, I find that very hard to believe, given the record in the past 10 years. Numerous government agencies have been shut down, status of women offices closed, advocates in various women's organizations shut down, funding's cut, Veterans Affairs offices closed, secret trade deals, yes, we don't know about anything that's in the Trans-Pacific trade deal. Canada has basically sold off our country piece by piece. China has a huge stake in the tar sands, and Stephen Harper paid no attention, basically ignored the rest of Canada until the oil prices started to drop. And suddenly he noticed that Ontario was here, that Quebec was here, and now he's using a fair agenda to get Quebec to vote for him. And collaboration hasn't happened.
I think we're going to stop right there. Our next question is another taped question. Please look at your monitor once again.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Walsh and I'm the founder of VoteSmart. My question for the candidates is, what are you going to do to engage the 39% of eligible voters who didn't vote in the last election? Thank you.
That is an excellent question. Thank you, Kelsey, for that question. Certainly, voting is a right that we have in Canada. We live in the most welcoming country in the world. We live in a democracy where human rights, respect for the rule of law, and democracy is paramount. We live in a society where there's freedom and acceptance and tolerance and love for one another, irrespective of what country we've come from around the world. And we have the democratic right to vote. As a government, we brought in important democratic reforms to encourage people to come out and vote, to engage citizens. As a member of Parliament, I have done exactly that. I've held many meet and greets in the community over the last 4 years throughout this campaign, and I will continue doing that in the future. I encourage all Canadians, all of the residents of Aurora, Oak Ridges, and Richmond Hill to come out on October 19th, exercise your democratic right, and vote. Thank you.
Leona?
That's an excellent question, and it's wonderful to hear it from Kelsey Walsh, who did such a fantastic job organizing the Vote Smart debate that we had in our local riding. It was obviously very too bad that Mr. Menegakis was unable to make it, but she was focused on getting that youth vote out, and we were honored to be able to work with her in that. A Liberal government is focused on the youth and investing in jobs. We have the highest number of 23 to 35-year-olds unemployed ever at 13%. More people under 35 unemployed by 3 times than people who are over 35. But what we need to do is we need to inspire them to believe that their vote matters and to make them feel as though being involved can make a significant difference. This is their future, and we need them to believe that they will make a difference because by getting involved, and they are our future leaders.
Thank you. Kyle?
Well, being that I'm just turning 25 now, I'm part of that age demographic that from 18 to 24, where there's such a huge disparity between the amount of people actually turning up for polls and potential votes. And there's a reason, I think, why that is. Governments aren't speaking to us, and they're not addressing the real issues that matter to our generation. Now, tackling environmental issues, I think, is a huge one. But because governments, they really talk a nice game, but they don't actually really have a good strategy for actually tackling climate change, for tackling environmental degradation. And with regards to unemployment, we have an economy that has basically been left to globalization. Rather, we need to look back to gain our sovereignty, to create local jobs, especially for our younger generation, so that way they have a future, not just simply, inspiring them. We've got to actually give them something to be inspired about. And that's what I'm hoping to do if you'll give me the honor of being your MP for Aurora-Oak Ridges-Richmond Hill.
Brenda?
I would strongly encourage people to vote. It is their democratic right, and despite Stephen Harper's best efforts, we still do live in a democratic country. I would also encourage people to not just go vote, but to do some study, to do some research, to read more in depth on the various policies by the various parties, and then make an informed decision. I would also talk to the young people. I'm very concerned about their issues. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She'll be going to university next year. And I'm also very, very concerned about environmental issues. I would like to engage the young people, the youth. I've already talked to some of them. And I want to hear from them. I want them to be involved and to know that their voice does matter.
Thank you. I think we will move to the next question now. That's from me. When asked what worries the average middle-class voter today, it's being able to provide for their families and afford their life without being strapped. Outline what you feel is the most important initiative of your party to help middle-class families. And we're starting with Leona.
Thank you very much. This election truly is about making Canadians feel like they can invest in the future and that they have an opportunity to make their lives and those of the next generation better than what they are today. The Liberal Party is committed to lowering taxes for the middle class, which will make a significant difference by putting more money in their pocket. We'll also invest in infrastructure that'll not only set a foundation for today, but for the future, and create jobs and job security, and encourage corporations to establish their companies here. We need to look at what we're going to do today and tomorrow. And one of the most significant things is certainly around our democratic process. We need to set the tone for the country that we will be one that is collaborative, one that is open, one that is inclusive, and one that represents the values of who we are as Canadians.
Thank you. Kyle.
I think representing our riding is very important, especially when it comes to the middle income earners, and just making life more affordable is a very important issue on a lot of voters' minds. What we need to be doing is instead of focusing on big companies, we need to be investing in giving people the ability to start small businesses. We need to make the taxation system for small businesses a lot more simple, probably flat taxing. We need to lower a lot of the bureaucratic red tape around small business, but what we also need to do for homeowners is the biggest source of debt across the country is utilities and mortgage bills. And that is, I think, may allow creating homes that have a lot lower of a price tag for a middle class is essential, and putting more money back in their pockets is also essential to making life more affordable for them.
Brenda.
The NDP party has a number of policies that would definitely help the middle class. We want to invest in projects that will grow more jobs, long-term, stable jobs. We're also investing in children in various ways. We're investing in youth, and we're investing in seniors. We're lifting seniors out of poverty. These are the parents of the middle class. We also support strong unions, and strong unions build the middle class. We want to help people get out of poverty and rise up. We're interested in the working class and just providing good jobs and helping the middle class tackle household debt in various ways, and focusing on jobs and the environment.
Thank you.
I am proud to be a part of a Conservative party and a member of the Conservative government that has focused on providing for all Canadian families. We have lowered taxes through tax credits and lower taxes over 180 times over the past 10 years. The average family of 4 now is paying $6,500 less in taxes on an annual basis. We have focused on keeping taxes low for corporations and small businesses, with the corporate tax rate going from 22 to 15%, with the small business tax rate going from 15 to 11, projected to go to 9 in this year's Economic Action Plan, Budget 2015. We do that because that creates employment, that creates wealth, and it's the New York Times that, in a recent study that was published, that said that Canada has the wealthiest middle class in the world.
Thank you. Now we will open the floor for discussion.
I find those comments very interesting, Mr. Menegakis, because if that were true, then why are so many Canadians unemployed, underemployed, having so much of their personal household income go to all of these things so that they feel that they're worried about their future? They can't afford for their children to go to university. Their students are in higher student debt. We are caught in the generation where we have to look after our elders. People in this country are worried about their security and their financial stability, and the economy is in recession, and we've got $160 billion in debt over the last 10 years, and we have the lowest growth rate since the Great Depression. So how are middle-class families doing better?
Middle-class families are prospering in Canada. They are paying less taxes. You mentioned a recession. There is no recession. That's a fabricated thing that the Liberal Party and the NDP has brought up in this election.
The
Stats
Bank of Canada says we are in
Stats
recession.
Canada yesterday said we had yet another month of continued growth. Renowned economists like Jack Mintz, Greg Alexander, and the economists of every major bank in Canada said that Canada is growing and that we're going to have a surplus again this year. We had a $1.9 billion surplus with a balanced budget 1 year ahead of time in 2014-15. We have a $5 billion surplus in the first quarter of this fiscal year. Canadian families want to keep their taxes low. They don't want their taxes taken away. They don't want their tax-free savings accounts taken away, as the Liberal Party has pledged to do. They do not want income splitting taken away, which the Liberal Party is projected to do. Canadian families are doing well. The best way to help Canadian families is to leave money in their pockets, because the best people that know what to do for their families is mom and dad, Leona.
Yeah, but the problem is that the costs for average families continue to go up. And it's not just taxes. It's important to keep taxes very affordable for families. But there's other costs too. Costs of living that the current government has not taken into account. We continue to build and develop our communities with constant growth without actually a proper plan for development. Our councillors in our local area are saying enough. We need to stop the growth and we need to do development first. And the problem is the current government, they just want continued growth without development. Growth, Mr. Menegakis, is just something getting bigger. Development is smart, innovation of a community. We need to develop our communities. We don't need to grow them further so that way they continue to have costs that are further burdened on the average family. Just because the government may have lower taxes, they also need to look into how to prevent other costs from being put onto the middle class. And we also need to look at especially investing in education and their youth. We need to look at taking care of our most impoverished people in a really fiscally responsible way. We need to look at taking care of our senior citizens. And we need to stop prioritizing our money into things like the military. We need to start looking into investing locally here in Canada. Our citizens is what matters the most, not all these other extremities. We need to focus on representing this riding and what matters to this community.
Brenda?
I think it also comes down to how each party defines the middle class in terms of income, and obviously the Conservatives define the middle class at a higher level of income. Various reports from economists on different sides of the political spectrum have criticized the boutique tax cuts, including the C.D. Howe Institute and the Fraser Institute, who are both traditionally right-wing think tanks. The Globe and Mail has also criticized these tax cut benefits, boutique benefits, because they only benefit the upper levels of income. The majority of your average middle income and low income people have not benefited from these boutique tax credits. The other effect, of course, that they've created a huge revenue deficit in the government, which in turn results in massive cuts to social services and welfare programs, pension programs, veteran services across the board. They've also sharply criticized the Conservative government on its attitude towards things like Canada Pension. Their own former finance minister criticized them on their attitude toward Canada Pension. So you cut taxes, cut the taxes, then the government has no money and then uses that as a justification to cut services and just give more tax breaks to corporations, and they just sit on it and do nothing with it.
And I think that's an excellent point. We in Canada don't have a problem paying reasonable taxes to a government to deliver services.
And the
this government has not delivered those services, and that's why we're in the situation we're in.
They're at a record high in our country. We're providing very valuable services, and we're doing it in a sustainable way, in a way that we can afford to do it.
That's why the wait times have increased exponentially, and we've cut all these offices.
The Liberal platform is promising huge deficits. The NDP platform is promising tax increases that will cost hundreds of thousands of jobs in this country.
We're talking about tax increases. We need strategies for how to develop our community. That's the problem.
Kyle, you keep mixing municipal issues with federal issues.
No, but the thing is that we represent...
There is a big difference. You mentioned youth employment before. Let me bring to your attention the $300 million in the youth employment strategy that we have implemented.
Let me also bring to your attention the summer jobs program
that brings to York Region over $750,000 every single summer for youth to be employed.
A summer job is not a job.
We've invested heavily in science and technology. We've invested heavily in post-secondary education. We've invested heavily in Red Seals training, in apprenticeship programs, and we will continue to do so.
If I may interject, as far as I'm aware, and I've studied all of the policies, the only tax increase that the Thomas Mulcair has talked about is a 2% tax increase on corporations. And if I may also, whenever I read about any policies, I don't just take what's being given to me from the NDP. I research everything, and I look at sources on both sides, both from the left and the right and the center. And in the past 10 years, I have not seen positive reports on Harper Conservative policies. Very minimal and very rare.
I'll be happy to provide you with some of the websites where you can read about it. But I will also tell you this, the 2% increase that the NDP and Thomas Mulcair have promised, every major economist in Canada has said will cost at the very least 150,000 Canadians their jobs. Canadians don't want to lose their jobs, Brenda. They want to keep their jobs. And that is why we're focused on a low-tax plan that creates jobs for Canadians.
I find it very strange that
new Canadian jobs have been targeted as the objective by our government by 2020, in addition to the 1.3 million that have already been
I
created.
just find it very ironic that corporate tax cuts are sitting in corporations as dead money in the amount of approximately
No, they're sitting in employment. 1.3 million
$650 million, and yet no new jobs
Mr.
have been
Menegakis.
They're sitting
created.
in
And yet if
employment.
there's a slight tax increase, there are going to be jobs lost. I find that rather mythical.
I think we're going to go,
truth.
that was a great debate. I think we're going to go to the next question, however. Okay. The Conference Board of Canada, along with the Canadian Medical Association, have recently released a study that suggests 3 strategies to cope with an aging baby boomer population. A population that, according to the journal PLOS ONE, cost Canadians $54,000 in the last year of their life alone. The strategies are basing the Canadian health transfer on age of the population, not just population, to cover the entire cost of medications for those spending more than $1,500 a year, or 3% of their income, and offering a refundable tax credit to those informal caregivers across the country. What is your party's plan in relation to these strategies? Kyle, we're starting with you.
Well, I have what I would propose in the House of Commons is simple. We need to invest in our Canadian citizens, and especially our older generation. And our current government is investing too much in the military, and we need, as far as I'm concerned, we need to go back to a peaceful nation. We need to get rid of the military, and we need to use that money that we would save from that annually for the increased costs that can cover for the elderly and especially the baby boomer generation as they grow. And we also need to do that for taking care of the veterans, because if we continue on business as usual with our military, we will have further costs on our healthcare system with all the mental health issues and PTSD. But what we need to use that money for instead is to take care of our veterans adequately and properly, and our baby boomer generation who built this country.
Thank you. Brenda.
The NDP is committed to investing in home care, and I also personally I'm a very strong proponent of home care, expanding that system and creating jobs in the home care sector and increasing the wages of home care workers. I'm also very interested in promoting health programs for older people and people in their 50s and 60s to look at healthier alternatives in terms of food, in terms of the environment they live in. These are important, and to reduce the healthcare costs down the road, because a lot of the illnesses that old people or seniors suffer from can actually be reduced, if not many of them can be eliminated, if we can help provide healthier choices. We also promote a pharmacare program, and we are going to look at enhancing the Canada Pension Plan.
Thank you. Costas?
Transfers from the federal government for healthcare, the provision of healthcare services to the provinces, are at a record high. They've never been this high in Canadian history. In fact, transfers to the province of Ontario as a total were $10.8 billion when Stephen Harper became Prime Minister of our country. This year, they're well in excess of $20 billion, an increase of some 88% and projected to be even higher. We need to respect the fact that healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. We'll continue to work closely with the provinces. The Canada Health Act agreement that expired in 2014 has been extended beyond the 2014 deadline period. There are projected increases additionally to the increases that have already been put in the healthcare system for the years moving forward, up to and including the year 2025. We'll continue to invest heavily in ensuring that the provinces are well funded for the provision of healthcare services for Canadians.
Leona.
Thank you very much. I think what the Conservative candidate hasn't really come clear on, though, is that the transfer payments to Ontario have decreased by over $1.1 billion every year, whereas the transfer payments to Alberta have increased by 28%. So the real question is, what are we doing for the equitable distribution of transfer payments to support our healthcare infrastructure to ensure that the right provinces and the right people are getting what they need? A Liberal government is committed to investing in seniors, certainly by expanding the CPP, which the Conservative government was not open to doing, not even opening to working with the provinces to be able to do that. We're looking at a $20 billion investment in infrastructure for long-term care facilities, seniors' homes, and affordable housing. And we're also committed to $3 billion investment in the health care that will have in-home care, pharmacare, and other things that we can do to work with the provinces on this issue.
Thank
Brenda,
you.
I thought
We're going to
that was
open the
really
floor
The
now.
fact of the matter is, we need to set the record straight here. Transfers to the province of Ontario from the federal government have increased from $10.8 billion to over $20 billion this year. I have no idea where my Liberal opponent here is getting her math from.
Well,
With
That's
respect
just
to our
not true.
seniors, we introduced the largest guaranteed income supplement, the GIS increase in Canadian history for our seniors. We're investing heavily in seniors programs across the country. We have
And yet
introduced
in
income
Ontario
splitting for our
alone,
seniors,
we have
which is helping seniors,
25,000 people on the
from
waiting
coast to
list
coast to
for
coast in this
long-term
country.
care.
Additionally, we have introduced and expanded the New Horizons for Seniors programs. There are over 50 seniors groups that
Mr.
are providing
Menegakis,
services
you're
in Aurora
Mr.
and Richmond Hill
Menegakis, you're
alone
not talking
that have
about
availed
something
themselves
that
of
will
those
actually
services
pay
and
for
continue to
seniors
avail
in the
themselves of
future.
those
Talk over each
services
other.
on a
Thank
daily
you.
basis. We are very proud of the contribution that seniors have made in building our country. We stand with our seniors and will continue to provide important funding and programming to ensure that our seniors have the best health care, the best life moving forward. Thank you.
Apparently, CARP, the Canadian Seniors Association, doesn't agree with the Conservative government and has publicly stated that it is actually supporting the NDP.
I agree with a lot of what Brenda was saying earlier, especially when it came to focusing on nutrition, because there are a lot of things with pertaining to preventing a lot of the ailments that a lot of seniors face, which will lower a lot of the costs in the healthcare system. But Mr. Menegakis, we need a strategy which will not just give seniors a discount and will help investing in programs for them. We need something that will ensure that they will be taken care of when that time comes, because as it increases, we need to be taking care of the people that help build this country, and we need the adequate amount of funds that will be able to do that. We need to stop investing in ridiculous military costs and expansion, and we need to be investing in our seniors, in taking care of the health of our own citizens first. And we need the adequate amount of money to do that. And we need to be also focusing on making the nutrition for seniors an approachable thing, which I'm glad that Brenda was able to bring up.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question. This one is on immigration. The image of a drowned Syrian toddler resonated with people around the world and created a spotlight on what some experts call a global refugee crisis. What do you believe that Canada needs to do to address the crisis, and what do you think needs to be done to improve or amend the current immigration process? And this is going to Brenda first.
The very first thing we're going to do is bring 10,000 Syrian refugees to this country by the end of the year. We are also bringing our troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan. We oppose the bombing in Syria, and it will stop. And hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent on these so-called wars, when in fact it's led to the point where it's nothing more now than a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And I really question why we're even involved in this. We want to make immigration easier, not just for Syrian refugees, but for others as well. The process has become extremely cumbersome, overly bureaucratic. Many people who were on waiting lists were suddenly dropped off. And this is a humanitarian crisis first and foremost, and we will not succumb to the fear and the paranoia that's been promoted around this issue.
Costas.
Canada has sustained the highest levels of immigration in our history over the last 10 years. With respect to refugees, we are one of the most welcoming countries in the world. We work very closely with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres. I personally have flown to Geneva to meet with officials there on the refugee crisis and the refugee issue. We have accepted already in Canada 42,000 refugees from Iraq and Syria. We are projecting an additional 10,000 refugees. We're expediting the process from Syria, from the region, to come to Canada by September of next year. We will, however, ensure that at all times the proper security screens are put in place to ensure that those that come to Canada are people that are indeed in need of refuge and people that will not pose any threat to our citizens, because the primary responsibility of any government is the protection of its citizens.
Leona.
I think that the protection of the citizens under this Conservative government, it sounds more like an excuse to do nothing than to actually move forward on this. They say that they're committed to expediting the process, and yet we haven't seen anything happen. We've only had about 2,000 refugees come to this country when there are 700,000. Canada has always been a country that is welcoming and that is open to bringing people here, particularly people who are vulnerable and in need. None of the parties are saying that we would do anything less to protect Canadians and not have the normal process to be able to protect and screen and ensure that we don't bring people in who shouldn't be here. But that's not an excuse to not do something and bring people. I've been working with the local religious organizations in Aurora, and they have to come up with extensive amounts of money, and they're still saying that the process will take 3 years to bring one family of 4. The Liberal government will do more and do it quickly.
Thank you. Kyle?
I think with our riding, we've seen a particular rise in population, which has resulted in a lot of the immigration that has happened. With regards, though, to how we actually tackle the humanitarian crisis that's happening in the Middle East, our current government has focused specifically on ISIS. But the biggest factor that's displacing people 8 times more than ISIS, that's causing 8 times the amount of deaths and 8 times the amount of displacement, is the Assad regime. And they are being backed by Russia. So what we need to be doing is, rather than sending our troops into harm's way, we need to become a nation more focused around peacekeeping. And the thing about it is that we have, with regards to how we actually tackle the whole crisis as a whole, the international community needs to come together to figure out how we, as international countries, can collaborate to solve this problem, because it's not going to be solved simply by just accepting more people.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I want to move to the next question, so we're not going to do an open floor on that one. And this one's on leadership. Name the one attribute your party leader has that puts him or her head and shoulders above the other choices for Prime Minister. And we're starting with you, Costas.
Thank you. Well, as I said earlier, I'm very proud to be on Stephen Harper's team. He is a true leader. He has shown exceptional and extraordinary leadership on the world stage and domestically here in Canada. Our Prime Minister is known for his economic stewardship. We took Canada, a country that is a country of 35 million people, that was embroiled in the 2009 economic global turndown, and we were the first country to come out of that amongst the G7 countries. Both the International Monetary Fund and the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, have stated that Canada will continue to be a leader on the economic front in the years to come. That is because we've had an economist in Stephen Harper. We have him focused. He is a focused leader on what is best for Canadians. He's focused on keeping your taxes low. He's focused on economic growth and prosperity for this country. His economic stewardship is the envy of many countries around the world. Thank you.
Leona.
Well, I'm not going to limit it to one attribute. I think that there are 2 incredibly important things about our leader, Justin Trudeau. One, his values and his vision for the country. He believes in what it means to be Canadian. He has always looked at inclusion as being one of our strengths, multiculturalism, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, collaboration with everyone and working together to make this country what it has been. Peacekeeping and working as a positive force rather than as an aggressor, and giving us the hope to believe that tomorrow can be better than today. Secondly, he is part of a team. He can find the strengths in everyone and bring them to the fore and use them to their maximum. He will work with people and bring them together from differing points of view to make the solution even stronger. Provinces, municipalities, members of parliament on all sides. Those are what make my leader fantastic.
Kyle.
Well, my leader, Liz White, wants us to basically advocate for all of our ridings and to make our country a more sustainable and have a vision for our specific ridings that we are running for that will be more sustainable, more ecologically in tune, and that will help protect species, other wildlife and animals, and that will have a vision for our riding where we can speak our voices, where we can communicate rather than argue in the House of Commons, where we have a real democratic voice, and where we invest in our youth, our old people, invest in making sure that everybody has access to all of the basics that they need in life, into our education and our health care. Investing in Canadians and our residents is the most important thing.
Thank you. Brenda.
I believe that Tom Mulcair has an extraordinary strength of character and a great depth of integrity, along with a broad and deep intellect. I believe that he's genuinely sincere. He has the years of experience. He's been able to face Harper down time and time again in the House. He knows the issues and he knows how to discuss them. He knows how to promote them. He believes in social justice and he believes in economic justice. And he also believes in a strong, healthy environment. I truly believe that Tom Mulcair possesses all of these qualities, and he ranks highest among the leaders on trust and integrity and competence. And that's why I'm running for the NDP party, and that's why I support Tom Mulcair.
Thank you. We have a little bit, very little bit of time for a quick open floor on this. You can go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think that I'd like to weigh in on this with respect to the leadership that our Prime Minister has shown on the world stage. I've heard reference to ISIS a number of times here tonight. There's a perfect example of someone who works very closely with our allies around the world to ensure that Canada is there to stop the root of the problem on the refugees. The problem in Syria is ISIS. People are being displaced from their homes by the hundreds of thousands on a monthly basis. People want to live in their own country, in their own culture, speak their own language, and they're being displaced from their homes. The only way to deal with that is to deal specifically with leadership and trying to stop them from happening. You can't have people in masks lining up, folks. Are we done with time?
The other problem with that is ISIS is not the root of the problem.
It absolutely is the root of the problem. This is what ISIS did. They lined up 21 Coptic Christians with their faces covered, and while they're reciting the Lord's Prayer, ladies and gentlemen,
yet one of Harper's best friends is Saudi Arabia, who executes a person every 2 days.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching. Go to rogerstv.com. Thank you. Thank you, candidates.